And welcome back to the show. We're talking all about teaching your kids to drive. Tips for those teenage drivers. Oh, they are naughty. And if your kids are anything like I was, well, then you're constantly rescuing them. I was kind of a bad driver, but we of course called in our expert, Craig Swapp, with Craig Swapp and Associates. We always love having you in here just to talk about these various things. And when we get in trouble, if we need an attorney, things like that, you're there.
That's right.
But we also like to give the tips so they don't have to get to that point. Let's start with just teen drivers. There's so many distractions these days, especially with phones.
Well, you know, and the teens think they're invincible.
Oh, yeah.
Because they can do everything, but...
And they don't understand the consequences of driving this huge machine. They don't understand the power it has.
Well, and statistically, the sad thing, Jenny, is that when you think about 50% of these accidents that happen end up in casualties. They actually die.
Yeah.
I mean, they're much more likely to die in a car than you and I are.
Yep. Well, and one thing I've noticed is, you know, being a traffic reporter for quite a few years, I've seen the accidents, and you see a pattern in a lot of ways, and you see things that I think I missed before doing that job, and it's crazy just how frequently speed and distractions are a big reason for all these accidents. Especially
for these young people, you know, the teenagers that just barely get their licenses. They're inexperienced.
Right.
You know, they just don't have the background to really do it. And I'm sure your dad paid tons of premiums.
While, if he's watching right now, he is like, it's like PTSD for him or something, because it was, yeah, I didn't understand the power my car had. And I learned the hard way a lot of times, black ice or just so many variables. What can parents do to try and help their teenagers or new drivers?
I think the best thing for them is to go with them and drive with them and make sure they understand all the different types of conditions, whether it's snowing or raining, ice on the roads.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's a big part of it. If your son or daughter knows that you care and you want to make sure they're driving safely. You know, and then there's just those things, if you can set a good example for them. You know, as you're driving, kids see everything that we do, whether
there's
it's good or bad.
There's a lot of parents that are on their phones too.
Right. I mean,
everybody's guilty.
So it's okay if I'm a teenager and I see mom doing it.
Then you can say, okay, well, I'm going to do it. Well, and of course, when they're getting their learner's permit, maybe, you know, having those conversations while they're driving. Granted, I think it's a hard thing. You've got the kid, you've got the parent, often contention, right? If mom's telling them how to do something, or dad, or whatever. But having those conversations and trying to really make them aware, like you said. And driving the conditions.
Right, and Utah law requires that when they do get a license, they're not to carry any passengers with them, but you know, friends except immediate family for 6 months. And I think if we as parents enforce that, I think by the time that 6 months lapse, they're going to be a better driver, just like all of us have become better drivers with time.
Absolutely. And, you know, advising them driving in rain versus snow, because there's such a difference. And in Utah, we have so many elements that we're trying to figure out. I know that several of my accidents were caused based on the weather. And I didn't understand the weather at that time and how detrimental it could be.
Well, and that's one thing, and as a parent of a teenager, look at the tires too, because that can play a huge role in how slippery it is or how stable it'll be during, you know, inclement weather.
Yeah, absolutely. As far as, you know, if kids do get in an accident, should parents have those conversations with them? Hey, if you're in an accident, make sure to do this and that when it happens. That
would be very helpful, because most times the teenager gets it, the first person they call is their mom or their dad.
Yep.
You know, and it would be nice if they knew. I mean, that's very helpful, but you know, really you need to get a hold of medical professionals or someone if you're hurt.
Do you always call the police even if no one's hurt? Is it a good decision?
It's always a better decision, because if there's damage to your car and then somebody gets amnesia about how it took place, they'll argue, well, you were at fault, not me. And then but the police can kind of document it, kind of identify all the witnesses, go from there. I don't think you'd ever go wrong with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And if things are worse or they need your help for any reason with this kind of stuff, how do they get a hold of you?
Just call Craig Swapp and Associates.
Perfect. He knows from experience too with kids, right? You know these
4
teenage
daughters.
Drivers.
Yep.
Oh, geez. My dad feels for you. He's got 3. All right. Craig, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jenny.